Well, when it comes to the Disney parks, one of the most recent changes that has probably sparked one of the biggest backlashes out there was Disney's change to their DAS system, which is their disability access service for those guests that have disabilities, as they drastically changed it last year, limiting it very much to a narrow scope. And since then, they hadn't changed the policy until very recently, where they removed one word from it and seemingly not being as restrictive potentially. And at the time, we wondered if this was due to perhaps loosening up of restrictions or if this was because of a potential lawsuit that they thought they could face. Well, it seems we probably have our answer to that question, as Disney is facing a class action lawsuit over their DAS changes. So we have an article here from Pirates and Princesses. We're going to read through here and give some thoughts on. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. And they said, we all knew it was inevitable. Disney changed its disability access pass guidelines to limit the number of people who could receive assistance. Many who were truly in need of the accommodation were denied, and now there is a class action lawsuit against both the Walt Disney Company and Inspire Health Alliance, LLC. I'm actually surprised this didn't happen sooner. When this first was changed, I really did figure there was going to start being lawsuits or you would hear rumblings of them, and I really hadn't heard anything until this lawsuit here, but I guess it could have been in the works for a while, but I'm not surprised one bit that there's a lawsuit over this. Inspire Health Alliance LLC is the company Disney has hired to screen guests and determine if they qualify for the DAS service. If pushed through, this lawsuit will be open to anyone denied DAS on or after June 18, 2024, when Disneyland's changes went into effect. Walt Disney World's policy started in May. Since Disney changed the service to only allow for more profound autism or similar, many have taken to the internet to protest, and there was a very popular change.org petition about the situation. And the changing they made to the DAS policy was they removed the term only, because they had said it's only for those with autism or similar disabilities. They removed that categorization of only. So that was, I'm guessing part of this lawsuit is the fact that it was very limited to that scope only. But said yesterday, a class action suit, Malone versus Disney, was filed in Orange County, California. In the lawsuit, they claimed that Disney's disability access service policies and practices systematically discriminate against individuals with physical disabilities and violate their rights to equal access, privacy, and dignity. They also argue that the system is flawed. Says this class action lawsuit challenges Disney's disability access service accommodation privilege and advantage, alleging that its screening eligibility criteria violates the rights of individuals with physical disabilities under the California UNRRA Civil Rights Act, infringes upon Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, known as HIPAA, state privacy rights under the California Confidentiality of Medical Information Act, and contains deceptive terms and conditions that contravenes the Consumer Legal Remedies Act, as well as California Business and Professions Code. DAS allows guests with eligible disabilities to request return times for attractions instead of physically waiting in line. The lawsuit aims to target 4 big complaints with the new process. Terms and conditions. Under the new system, guests were required to agree to Disney's terms and conditions before they were allowed to move forward in the process. The potential DAS user had to agree not to participate in a class action lawsuit, which in and of itself seemed fishy. I mean, we've seen Disney do this before. It was a lot of news last year whenever there was a guest that had a peanut allergy or some sort of allergy, ate at a Disney Springs establishment, Raglan Road. She was assured that there was nothing in the dish that would, be allergic for her. She ate it, and unfortunately, she passed away. And from that, her husband, her widow, sued Disney, and Disney tried to claim because he signed up for a Disney Plus subscription or a Disney Plus trial that he forfeit his right to be able to sue Disney. So Disney does like to do this, and it definitely seems a bit fishy to say, hey, to move forward in this process, you have to buy your tickets and then go through the DAS system, but also putting in the fine print that you can't sue them on something. Seems a bit fishy. I would agree with that. But again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know where this lies legally.
Although really, I specialize in bird law.
Disney's attempt to try and avoid class action lawsuits is listed as deceptive and unenforceable. It also allegedly violates the California Business and Professions Code. How the terms of service was presented does not qualify as an arbitration agreement under the FAA. The verbiage was no provisions outlining conditions for arbitration, mediation, or any other alternative dispute resolution. As someone who has signed agreements allowing for arbitration, I can tell you the steps, including location, selection of arbiter, etc., usually need to be mutually agreed upon. The next one is privacy. The second issue being filed over labeled PHI disclosure subclass is regarding alleged privacy violations. It is being argued that guests were required to provide sensitive medical information to Inspire Health Alliance without the proper privacy protections. As a result, other cast members and nearby guests could overhear the sensitive information. I think this is especially to do with Disneyland, because apparently in Disneyland, you can have these DAS interviews or sessions in person. So I think what they're alleging is, having sensitive medical information being discussed out in the open violates the privacy there. In Disney World, you have to schedule a time. This is all done online, but I think it's a little bit different out in Disneyland. So that's probably what that one is regarding. So number 3, denied DAS. This one has 2 parts. The first part is the DAS accommodation subclass, which applies to all physically disabled guests who were denied DAS after Disney revised its criteria on or after June 18th. The second part is the DAS denied subclass. This applies to all guests with disabilities who were denied DAS but then instructed to use Disney's alternative accommodations. Alternatives include options like attraction queue re-entry, meetup, rider switch, or location return times. It is argued that these were not equitable access offerings as they, quote, imposed undue burdens, logistical challenges, emotional distress, and safety risks. Anecdotally, there have been stories with guests being told to pay for Lightning Lane access to make the line shorter and boost Disney's profits. Other stories indicated that they were told to, quote, practice standing in line at home. I have heard that one as well. What is the lawsuit seeking? It says ultimately the lawsuit is seeking the following resolutions: certification of the proposed classes and subclasses outlined in the document, as well as acknowledgement that the policies violate the UNRWA Act, the CMIA, and the Californian law. An injunction requiring Disney to revise the DAS program to comply with California laws and also to remove misleading eligibility criteria, to ensure equitable access for those with disabilities, restitution and statutory damage, including attorney fees and costs, and other relief the court deems fair. Said, can the class action suit win? It is possible that the suit could indeed win against Disney, but I think each section has different odds. The misleading terms of service could be beaten. They clearly do not represent the proper methodology. Looks like a scare tactic to attempt to force those with disabilities to agree to their terms in exchange for better accessibility. I'd say the terms of service is, and if, again, not a lawyer, but that one seems a bit, seems odd on its face. I could see that one being something that ends up having something to do with it, or having a part of this, potentially win out. It says privacy might be a bit harder to argue because prior to the changes, guests would go up to cast members at will call and request a DAS pass. Under those circumstances, guests were disclosing their personal information and conditions for years and did not file suit. It may be harder to win here. Fair. I guess you would just call that like precedent perhaps, but yeah, that's possible. And then acceptable accommodations in lieu of DAS. Under the ADA, Disney is required to provide accommodations for guests with disabilities. In this case, they are providing alternatives. DAS just allows for return time access to attractions. Guests wait for specified times equal to the wait time for everyone else. Then they are allowed to go up to the front of the line to access the attraction. The system was already more fair than the previous one because it allowed for equitable wait times. Under the new accommodations, guests with disabilities can still wait outside the line while members of their party stand in line for them. The issue is that this is not always easy to switch out guests with disabilities in the line. However, accommodations are being made, and guests with disabilities do have to remain in an area that could cause them harm. Disney will argue that they are indeed providing accommodations similar to those of DAS guests. This is indeed similar, but if someone is traveling alone with 1 or 2 caregivers, it could cause issues, which is one of the aspects the lawsuit argues. They say Disney has won in the past. So we shall see what happens, but Disney has prevailed in the past. When the GAC, guest access card, was replaced with the DAS, Disney was sued and won. GAC allowed people to skip the line immediately and often, but DAS required guests to wait for return time. They were sued over ADA accessibility and won. So, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, and we've never used the DAS system, so I can't speak to how it worked then versus how it works now. All I know is, supposedly Disney changed this system due to the amount of fraud that was there. And, just from hearing things in the parks, you would overhear people telling other people how to get a DAS pass, and there were people using DAS undoubtedly that did not need it, that were just trying to circumvent the system, essentially almost getting a free fast pass, a free lightning lane in a way. And I think that is one of the contributing factors that caused Disney to come down so harshly, almost like a new teacher stepping in and being very, very strict right off the bat here and restricting this seemingly just to those with autism or something very similar to autism, and not allowing DAS for really more like physical disabilities. Now, I don't know where that lies in terms of, is it enough for those with physical disabilities? And there were even stories out there in major publications talking about kids with autism who this system seemingly would be designed for were being denied this. And it was causing, obviously, a lot of stress and issues for families. And obviously, in the past, if you qualified for this and you're legitimately disabled and not able to get it now, obviously this is going to impact your trip. And the fact that you have to buy your tickets first and then go through this process, adds another layer of stress and worry to a trip. Like, are you going to get approved for this? Like, how's it going to work? So I understand from that perspective. I just can't speak to the specifics of it. So I understand from both the guest perspective and also from Disney's perspective, if there was major fraud going on and they knew it, and reportedly, I think at one point they said 2/3 of people using Lightning Lane were DAS, people claiming DAS or something along those lines. There was a lot of people that they were saying were claiming that it was DAS, and they saw an uptick in this once they started charging for Lightning Lanes and Genie Plus. So, a lot of people just didn't want to pay that, supposedly is why they would have done that. So the people that were doing that, not good, not faking a disability to be able to get a DAS pass is not something that I would say is a good thing. I'd say karma is real, and eventually that sort of behavior will catch up to you. But, I don't know how many. I can't attest to inside numbers on that, so who knows where that number lies. But I do know there's been a lot of people that have been very disappointed in how the DAS system is working now, and seemingly, I always felt it was strange to, the lines aren't built for people to really go in and out of them. So like if you're trying to go in, if someone's waiting in place and you try and get back in that line outside of using lightning lanes, a lot of these lines aren't really set up for that, so I'm sure that's caused some issues in some of these lines here. But I given out in California, and it seems like a lot of this is very specific to California. I don't know if this would end up affecting Disney World, as the laws are different in California versus Florida on these matters. And it seems this lawsuit is more based about Disneyland and their policies. But I don't know if say the class action lawsuit were to win, very likely Disney would just make a blanket change at both parks. I would guess. Don't know if that's exactly what would happen, but I can see a scenario like that happening. So I'm not surprised to see a lawsuit here. Like I said, not a lawyer, so I'm not going to take any guesses as to who's going to win. Disney obviously likes to settle these things out of court if they can. As a lot of times major corporations don't do well in a trial, especially if you're talking like disabilities and Disney going to trial over this and it goes to a jury. A lot of times they try and avoid that as much as they can, just because typically bigger corporations, they don't seem to be very sympathetic to a jury, and a lot of times we'll lose in these. So I could see this maybe getting settled out of court. Maybe they make some accommodations and some concessions on this on some level, or this could simply just people looking for money. You never know with these things. But seemingly with Disney having changed the verbiage about DAS on their website, I guess it does give them potentially the ability to loosen up on this and offer it out, outside of just those with autism or something similar, as they could start offering it, more for people with physical disabilities of different, natures and things like that. I haven't heard any reports back on if it has loosened up since then, or anything like that. So I don't know. I don't think that's changed much. I haven't heard anything if it has. But with this lawsuit out here, I guess there could be some potential changes with this. Probably won't know anything for a while. Again, lawsuits take a while for the most part. But there is a lawsuit out there, and, Disney very well could fight it all the way up until the end of it, end up winning. They have won before, so just because typically corporations don't do well in a trial doesn't mean they necessarily would lose on this. So who knows where this ends up or where it goes, but there's a lawsuit out there, and we'll have to wait and see how it ends up changing DS, if it does at all, or if Disney makes any further changes to that system. But either way, that's going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do all this coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about this story? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.